Donald Trump's elite golf resort in Scotland becomes the target of a mysterious attack. In the middle of the night, unknown assailants try themselves and send out a message that could detonate the world community. Who is behind this audacious act? Why are the authorities hiding the details? And how can one incident change the course of world politics? The answers are in this video. Don't miss a second. The ending will shock you. The calm before the storm. Turnberry Golf Resort, one of Scotland's most luxurious destinations, was gleaming in the morning sun. The greens, the perfect paths, the mirror-like water on the greens, a picture of elite luxury and major league status. There was no room for chaos, chance, or unpredictability here. In fact, it seemed that way. At the main event, surrounded by the smell of fresh coffee and expensive wood, resort manager Harry Freeman walked around the lobby, checking on final preparations before the tournament. "I want everything to sparkle," he barked at the junior manager. "The presidential brand is clean, impeccable, and in control. If one customer complains about anything, you go polish the parking lot with your teeth." The junior manager is nervous that this is not a joke. Outside, hotel workers were hastily polishing glass doors, waiters were checking the VIP breakfasts, and gardeners were trimming the last bush to make everything look more expensive than someone's annual salary. The world's richest people were vacationing here, and rumors were that a couple of Arab billionaires, representatives of oil corporations, were among the expected guests. "Look who they brought," muttered one of the Swiss as a column of black SUVs rolled into the parking lot. 5 men in perfectly tailored suits stepped out of the car. Their faces were hidden behind dark hands. Their expressions were impassive. They looked as if they had stepped out of the pages of some thriller. One of them, tall and thin, approached the reception desk. "We have suites booked. Complete privacy. We do not need excursions, guides, or waiters, and no one is allowed to enter our room unless absolutely necessary." His voice was low, with a slight Arabic accent. The manager was wary, but smiled. Money always beat offer in this place. "Of course, gentlemen." He handed over the cards by number, trying not to show his concern. Meanwhile, in a VIP restaurant, 2 women were discussing Trump's new political initiative. One of them, an American journalist, chuckled. "Have you heard about this new plan? To invest billions in the development of Gaza? To restore the destroyed areas and open a resort area?" "It's funny." The second woman, a London socialite, sipped her champagne. "It's another business move. Controlling territory through money. A typical strategy." At this moment, when the morning seemed ordinary and profitable, somewhere in the distance, behind the hills, something began to emerge that turned this picture upside down. After all, in the world, great calm is only a pause before the storm. Unexpected guests. Turnberry Golf Resort had its own huge life. In the restaurant, filled with the soft clinking of glasses and hushed voices, some discussed deals, others, scandals. The air was filled with the aroma of expensive whiskey and something more imperceptible, but tangible, power. A column of black SUVs pulled up in the parking lot, glittering in the morning sun. The cars looked too big, too long, like something out of a spy movie. Manager Harry Freeman watched through the huge picture window. His white nervousness. It was a feeling he rarely had. These people did not look like the guests of the all-too-typical resorts. Silent, too reserved, too tense. The door opened, and 5 men walked into the parliament. All were dressed in perfectly tailored suits, but there was no hint of relaxation. They moved with such confidence, as if they were not just renting rooms here, but our hosts were on a resort. The first, tall and thin, with sharply defined cheekbones, headed for the reception desk. His eyes, covered with dark arrows, lingered on Harry for a second longer than he expected. "We have suites booked. Complete privacy. We do not require excursions, guides, or waiters. Do not enter our rooms unless necessary." Harry raised his eyebrows. It wasn't uncommon for such demands to be made by billionaires and celebrities, but in this case it sounded less like a request and more like an order. "Of course." He handed over the cards from the rooms, trying not to show concern. "Your luggage." "We ourselves." I took the keys and silently headed for the elevators. The rest stick to those like shadows. Harry watched as the elevator doors closed. Something about these people made him uneasy. They weren't just rich tourists. They were something else. "Have you seen them?" One of the administrators, a young man with a keen gaze, asked quietly. They don't look like oil tycoons or Arab princes. Harry is surprised. The other one has their mood. Do you know what it is? Which? The attitude of people who have a mission. On the covered terrace with a panoramic view of the coast sat two women, American journalist Melissa Gray and her Don friend, socialite Victoria Black. Have you heard about Trump's new project? Melissa asked, swirling her wine glass. About which one? Investments in Gaza. Billions of dollars. Resort area, hotels, golf courses. Victoria chuckled. Of course. Control of territory through money. You say that, it doesn't work. It works, of course. And that's exactly why some people won't like it. Meanwhile, the curtains in suite room 407 closed. 5 men stood at the window, watching the resort area. One of them, short and with short hair, took out his phone and sent something. Are we starting tonight? One of them asked. Yes. The world must hear us. The outer resort was shining in the rays of the setting sun. And no one, absolutely no one, suspected that in just a few hours this picture would change forever. Conspiracy in the shadows. Night fell slowly over Turnberry, enveloping it in thick blankets of silence. The sea breeze sighed lazily around the perfect golf courses, and quiet laughter began to sound in the VIP bar. It was as if the world had frozen in serenity. But in room 407, there was no such silence. 5 men gathered around a small coffee table. One of them unfolded a map of the area, another checked his phone for the latest messages, and a third silently laid out small cans of spray paint. The timing is perfect, the skinny manager said, taking off his watch and putting it down next to him. Minimal security, no live surveillance cameras, and the staff is too relaxed because they are the eyes that serve billionaires. 45 minutes will be enough for us, said the other, holding a small bundle in his hands. We leave a trace that they will not be able to erase in one day. The main thing is to do it quickly and cleanly, without unnecessary noise. We are not vandals. We are not terrorists. We are messengers. There was a tense pause in the room. Are you sure this will work? Asked the younger one. The leader looked up at him. According to Adam, the world works according to one scheme. Money dictates reality. If we do nothing, tomorrow this resort will be built in Gaza, on the land where children are dying now. And if the world sees this place dirty, destroyed, stained, investors will think twice about investing in a brand that is associated with resistance. This is our chance, another agreed. We're not just throwing paint on it. We're striking straight at the heart of the empire. Adam came, although deep down in his rational soul he still doubted. Okay, he finally squeezed out. Then let's get to work. The leader took out his phone and sent a short message. Let's go? The resort slept. In the parking lot, a security guard dozed lazily in a booth. The cameras continued to spin dispassionately, recording the empty paths. Dark figures, hiding in the shadows of the buildings, moved silently. Their steps were measured to the millimeter. Each knew his task. The first one took out a can of spray paint and began to write huge letters on the white wall next to the central entrance. No gas for sale. Mir unrolled the black bundle and poured scarlet paint onto the lawn, imitating traces of blood. Free Gaza, over the statue next to the golf club. Faster, the leader hissed, looking around. Time was against them. At the same time, Harry Freeman, tired after a long day, was finishing his last glass of whiskey at the bar when his phone rang under camera surveillance. He lazily reached for his cell phone and looked at the screen. Second. Just a few more seconds. Then his eyes widened. In the video, the dark figures appear to be graffiti right on the wall of the hotel. Harry jumped up, throwing his glass aside. What the hell? He was already reaching for the phone to call the guards when a rustling sound came from the speakers of the cell. One of the figures turned around, straight ahead. And Harry realized he had seen this man before. These guests were not just rich tourists. They came to leave a message. Turnberry Resort will never be the same again. The night that changed everything. The dark sky pressed down on the earth like a heavy blanket. The entire Turnberry Resort slept, immersed in silence, broken only by the whisper of the sea breeze. None of the guests, sipping expensive cocktails at the bar or peacefully dozing in their suites, knew that right now this perfect world was bursting at the seams. On the lawn in front of the building, a stain of paint spread out like spilled blood. Loud inscriptions of freedom of view and gas not for sale now cover the snow, white walls of the hotel, ugly copying themselves against the backdrop of the impeccable architecture. The group leader looked around carefully, making sure no one was looking. They did everything as they had planned, quickly, clearly, without witnesses. "There's just one last detail left," he said, taking out his phone. All he had to do was take a few shots and send them to the right people. Once these photos hit the web, they would spread all over the world. But at that moment something went wrong. In the silence of the night, the click of the lock was heard. The door to the side exit of the hotel opened, and a man appeared in the passage. They froze. It was Harry Freeman, the resort's manager. He held a phone in one hand and a gun in the other. "Put down everything you have in your hands." His voice sounded harsh, but inside he was barely containing his anger. The leader of the group stepped forward, raising his hands, holding the lamp, indicating that he was unarmed. "Look, friend, you don't want to do this." "Like hell," Harry barked, gripping the handle. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." He was not a military man, but the activists told him that these people were not ordinary activists. They moved too precisely, they knew where the surveillance camera was, and they clearly had a clear plan. "Seriously?" the leader chuckled. "Are you ready to shoot a man for a few graffiti on the walls?" "I am ready to shoot those who threaten my resort," Harry replied. The tension increased. Apparently, the air between them was sparking with tension. But before anyone could make another move, there was a sharp screech of an alarm. One of the motion sensors was triggered. The leader reacted immediately. "Let's go?" The group scattered. Harry fired into the air, but it only made them run faster. He faced forward, but it was too late. The figures disappeared into the darkness, dissolving into the trees, leading to the exit of the territory. Shit. A few minutes later, the resort woke up. Sirens, shouts from security guards, pockets of flashlights. Workers ran out of buildings, stunned by what was happening. The first to see the evidence of the night's invasion was the young manager. He froze in place, looking at the giant graffiti that covered the wall. "Oh my God!" Harry, breathing heavily, put the gun back in the holster. "Raise the police." Immediately, he knew one thing. The morning brings a storm. But this storm has already begun. The morning that changed everything. The first scream broke the morning silence when one of the administration employees went out onto the terrace and smashed the facade. Damn it! Huge letters spelling out "Freedom for Gays" lined the main wall. Scarlet paint splashes across the lawn looked like a massacre had taken place there. In a second, panic gripped the staff. People ran out of the building, frozen in shock. Some grabbed their phones, filming what was happening. Inside the hotel, in his office, Harry Freeman rubbed his temples, trying to contain his growing anger. The night chase had come to nothing. They were gone. Just vanished into the night. Now he had a ruined resort, a lot of questions, and no attacks. The door to the office swung open. "This is a disaster." The owner of the British branch of the company, the resort manager, stood at the threshold, a gray-haired man in a perfectly pressed suit. "Harry, what the hell happened here?" "Information storage has been completed." "An attack? This is called terrorism. Damn it. Did you see what they did to this show? These signs. This is blood on the grass." "It's not blood. It's paint. I don't care what it looks like." A crowd had already gathered outside. The resort guests, who had been enjoying luxury only yesterday, now stood in front of the hotel in a daze, laughing all the time for the camera. Every frame was a potential headline. And this title has already been written. "What do you mean? They ran away?" Someone yells on the phone. Managers, security, police, everyone was running around in chaos. Everyone. That this is more than just vandalism. Harry stood in front of the detective who had taken the first notes. "Do you have a camera?" "Yes, but they knew where they were. They worked quickly. You could hardly see their faces. So these weren't just random activists." Harry clenched his fists. No, these people knew what they were doing. At this time, on the other side of the city, in one of the cheap ones, a group of nurses in a small room, looking at a laptop screen. Photos of the resort have already spread across the electrical networks. The first headlines flared up like fire on dry grass. Scottish Golf Resort attacked. Vandals or message of peace. Free Gaza. What's behind the graffiti? Event leader, scrolling through the news. It's gone. Now they've heard us. Harry stood at the window of his office, watching what was happening outside. Turnberry Resort was no longer just an elite vacation spot. It was now a battleground for ideas. And that was just the beginning of the storm. The hunt begins. Police officers in dark blue uniforms swept the resort, their wristbands crackling as they issued terse instructions. Magazines, news sources, and social media were already exploding with headlines about the attack on Turnberry. It looked like one of America's elite had been attacked here. Harry Freeman watched from his office window, gritting his teeth. This was his resort, his fortress, and now it was desecrated. The door swung open, letting in a chilly blast of morning wind and a police detective, a tall man with a predatory gaze. "Freeman," he said, throwing the tablet on the table. "Here's what we have." A video appeared on the screen. Security cameras recorded several dark figures flickering in the shadows of the building and then disappearing. "They knew what they were doing," the detective muttered. "They moved in a coordinated manner, the same way, where the camera was, where the guard was. They weren't just tourists with nothing better to do." Harry is surprised. They stayed here, in the suites. 5 of them. They arrived in black SUVs. The registration was fake. The license plates were deregistered. Someone must have seen them. "I'm sure you did," Harry replied. "And we'll find them." Across town, in a cheap hotel with smoke-filled curtains, the band's leader turned off his phone. Their photos were already circulating online, but their faces were still in the shadows. "We'll stay in the city for another day," he said, looking at the satellite map. "We need to wait for the situation." "So what? Just sit and watch the news?" The leader chuckled. "Yes. While they are racking their brains, we are like this." But he knew that in such matters silence does not last long. Ghost hunt has begun at the resort. One of the employees found a cloth soaked in red paint in a garbage container. Another piece of evidence was strange movement in the old cells near the southern entrance. Someone was trying to get through the fence. Harry stepped closer to the detective. "Are they still here?" He shook his head. "No, they disappeared." Harry looked towards the hills beyond the area. He wasn't so sure about that. These people knew too well what they were doing, which meant they had a next step. And there was only one question: when will it happen? The truth that shook the world. The whole world already knew what had happened. CNN, BBC, the New York Times, all the main headlines screamed about scandalous attack on Trump Golf Resort. Social networks were literally boiling. Millions of views, thousands of comments. But the most important thing was yet to come. Harry Freeman stood in front of the desk, holding a cup of cooling coffee. The television was showing breaking news. A few minutes ago, in this case, a statement supposedly left as an argument ended the attack on the Turnberry Resort. The video is already gaining millions of views. He gripped the cup tighter. The screen flickered and an image appeared. Darkness. A muffled voice, distorted by audio filters, spoke. "We did this so that the world could hear the truth." The picture changed, showing footage of devastated Gaza, rubble of buildings, crying children, burnt-out streets. "This land is not for sale. These lives cannot be bought. You do not build a golf resort on blood." The next frame is a video from the resort. Graffiti on the walls. Scarlet spots of paint. "If you remain silent, you are also to blame." The video has ended. There was a deathly silence in the room. Harry felt his insides tighten. He turned around and saw that the detective standing next to him had literally turned pale. "Well then," he squeezed out. "Now this is no longer just a scandal." Harry ran his hand over his face. He realized that the game had changed. Before it was about vandalism. Now it was obvious. At the same time, on the other side of town, a group was looking at their phones. "It's gone," said one of them. The leader remained silent. They knew this video would change everything. And now their next task is to stay in the shadows. But they had no illusions. After this, a real hunt will begin for them. After the storm, the morning brought with it devastating chaos. Turnberry Resort was no longer the quintessential luxury haven it had been known for. It was now a symbol of global division. Some called it an act of heroism, others an attack on the capitalist empire. But the most important thing is that now everything has been said about Gaza. Harry Freeman sat at his desk in his office. 3 phones in front of him, filled with messages. The press was besieging the resort. Politicians were making statements. Clients were canceling a level. The detective, who seemed confident yesterday, now appears depressed. "They didn't just ruin your wall, Freeman." He shook his head wearily. "They made your resort a symbol of protest." Harry clenched his fists. "Do we have at least one lead?" The detective frowned. "Cameras. Cars. We found a couple of witnesses who saw them in the city. The question is, If we find them, what next? Harry looked up at him. In terms of? They didn't blow up the building. They didn't kill people. They just left a message. And now they have the entire world community on their side. Harry ran his hand over his face. It doesn't change what they did. The detective chuckled. Maybe it doesn't change. Or maybe it changes everything. On the other side of town, in a small rented apartment, a group of caregivers are working on a laptop. Look, Adam said, pointing at the screen. The hashtags are trending. Millions of views. People heard the same words we wrote on the walls on the streets. The leader looked, but there was something more than observation in his eyes. This is just the beginning. Adam looked at him. What now? Now we disappear. The leader closed the laptop. He's looking for us. We can't stay here. But our work can't be stopped. There was silence in the room. It is clear that there is no turning back. Turnberry Resort has reopened its doors. The graffiti was painted over, the paint was washed off, but the residue remained. The press continued to dig. The authorities, to look for the culprits. But the main thing has already happened. This resort will no longer be just a resort never. Now it was a battlefield, and no one knew what would happen next. Turnberry, the resort that changed everything. One night, and an elite resort became a symbol of protest. One message, and the whole world was talking about Gaza. The graffiti was painted over. The paint was washed off. But questions remained. Who are these people? Will the authorities be able to find them? And most importantly, what will happen next? This story is far from over. If you want to learn more about the most shocking events, subscribe to the channel, like, and click the bell. There are still many stories ahead that will rewrite reality.